So again, welcome to Inner Fitness and our flow our flow today. Our flow today's topic. I can tell we're in for a very interesting experience. Our topic today is flow. The speech is not flowing, hopefully other things might, but the topic today is flow. So as always, we're going to start with a reflection. Sitting quietly, that is, with my focus more inwards than outwards, feeling a natural stepping away from day-to-day thoughts and a pull, an interest to explore deeper thoughts, deeper ideas, to understand the self in a deeper way. And imagining the inner world I'm stepping into to be my kingdom, this world of thoughts and feelings. This is where happiness and peace really begin. And how is my inner kingdom doing at this moment? Does it feel cluttered, disorganized, complicated? Or does it feel simple, essential, clear, light? Is it easy to move through my kingdom? Or do I keep getting snagged on one issue or another? A memory here, a concern there, as if moving through my inner kingdom is like an obstacle race. Do I move peacefully through my inner kingdom easily? This is the place I always go explore when trying to understand the self. And my objective is to have such easiness in my inner kingdom, not a place I want to escape from or be distracted from, but a place where I can experience all I seek: contentment, well-being, and of course, peace. Om Shanti. A warm welcome again. And again, this interesting topic of flow. And even as we start with physical fitness, what this idea of flow is in terms of physical fitness, it might seem a little odd. So when you hear flow with respect to just physical fitness, what kinds of ideas come to you? What does flow have to do with that outer fitness? Before we get into inner fitness, just the outer fitness, where does flow fit in? Any thoughts?
Effortless moving.
Effortless moving. Very nice. We have fluid moving. Effortless.
No, no resistance.
No resistance. No resistance. Very good. So we have effortless, fluid, no resistance.
Less gravity.
Less, or maybe defying gravity. But like, 'cause I don't know if we can lessen gravity. It's a factor we can, but less gravity. So that's that pull to gravity. Yeah. So a lightness is there. Feeling unrestricted by gravity or anything else.
पहले ही बोला आंसर.
Uncontrolled. So Nilu put uncontrolled. So not feeling that sense of control or repression.
Maybe that's the part of the unrestricted. You don't feel restricted in your movement.
We even talk about clothing that way when it flows. We're flowing clothing that doesn't restrict you in any way.
Yeah, you don't want to wear jeans when you're doing stretching.
Don't wear jeans while you're stretching unless they're stretchy jeans. Yeah. So unrestricted clothing, we often talk about that when we're going into movement that allows you to move easily, fluidly, without restriction. Yes. Very good. I think you've covered it.
Seamless.
Seamless. So the idea that there isn't maybe this jerking.
Smooth transitions.
Smooth transitions, yeah. No shape from higher to lower level. Sangeeta, you may have to elaborate a bit on that. No shape from higher to lower level. I like it. I just might need some elaboration. I know. That's why I'm flowing over here. I'm buying you some time. The other day, flows from higher level to lower level, so able to flow between levels. Nice. The other day, someone was sharing, it was quite, well, it seemed funny. I'm sure it wasn't funny to them. I'm sure it was rather a concern. But they were driving their car, their physical car, and it started to jerk. It's not a manual, it's an automatic. It started to jerk as they're driving, and their fluid does not have any shape. Thank you, Sangeeta. That makes a lot of sense. So able to flow like a river, right? It just kind of flows around different shapes, very fluid. So they're driving their car and it's jerking, and I was meeting them, so they were late, and they explained the car was driving in a very jerky, not flowing at all, very jerky fashion. And the next time I met them, they didn't have the car. They had a different car because their car they were in broke down and sort of died. It's taken a great amount of expense to basically make it new. They have, in essence, almost a new car. It's very expensive, but it was interesting how that lack of flow was a signal to them that something wasn't right with the car. There may have been other signals, but it was that lack of flow, that jerkiness, that was a signal. And certainly if we see someone walking down the street in a very jerky manner and it's not a performance piece, then we might be triggered that there is something going on. So it tends to suggest something defective in the operation when things aren't flowing. And I know for me, with physical fitness now, this was always a sign of, unless of course you're going for a certain effect, but always a sign in any modality that the mechanics are executed correctly, if there's flow. I am not talking about just dance or the aesthetics. Even if I'm watching someone, say, do a power lift. So lifting, you've probably seen Olympic lifting. They have a very heavy bar with these massive weights at the end. And they're going to actually lift that thing. They're going to so-called clean it and rack it here on their sternum. they have this, those who have good mechanics, it's a very flowing movement. Even though there's actually several phases to that lift, you probably wouldn't be aware of those phases. They really have these amazing mechanics, and it looks effortless, even though they're lifting this massive weight. If there's mechanically accurate operation, then it flows. Just like that soul with their car, it wasn't flowing, suggesting something mechanically was wrong. And for me, one of the favorite parts of a class is this idea of flow. It's a sign of strength, but it's also a great way to challenge or build strength. Very often what happens is we'll do an exercise and then we'll just kind of fall apart, fall out of form, and then we work ourselves back into form for the next exercise, and then we fall out of form. A different kind of changing shape, if you will. And the cue that's so is, you know, is that the transitions are almost more important than the actual exercise. Is what is the transition between exercises? What's going on there? Yeah. Natural. So this idea of flow is that natural, and we do often say naturally flowing or natural flow. And so being able to really, develop such mechanics that, it starts to become natural. It's not just there when I feel on, but it's actually there in the spaces between. And we're, of course, used to seeing this for a dancer, a ballet dancer. The mechanics are ground so deeply into that dancer that even when they're just walking down the street, it feels like a performance. You can say, okay, that's a dancer right there. But even, this transition, they master this linking or flow between movements. It's not the movement and then stop. That would be a very strange performance, but it's this beautiful flow. And that requires incredible strength. And more importantly, not just good mechanics, but a lot of power to be able to flow through a movement physically. I'm always in awe and very aware when watching again in any modality. It could be swimming, it could be whatever. When they have that fluid feeling, we are deceived because it looks so effortless. And so we say, oh, I can do that. And we get into it, and it's like, no, I can't. But they made it look, and often the instruction we give is execute it in such a way that others believe they can do it. Make it look so effortless, so easy. It requires excellent mechanical execution and a lot of strength. And those two words, when we get into inner fitness, specifically Raj Yoga, those two words, mechanical accuracy and strength, correspond to the two words knowledge and yoga in Raj Yoga. Knowledge and yoga. I want wisdom, and I also want the power to honor that wisdom, to be able to execute it. This month, of course, we are celebrating and being inspired by the legacy of Brahma Baba, the first student of the Brahma Kumaris, the instrument to establish the university. And he was a master of flow, actually, in the sense of not that there aren't obstacles. Even gravity is an obstacle to flow, physical flow, gravity. There were obstacles, definitely so many obstacles. Whenever establishing anything new, there are obstacles. And this idea of the gravity of those obstacles, they were pretty serious issues that he had to face. And yet it was reported that there was such a sense of easiness in his demeanor that he moves through these obstacles with dignity, with what seemed like a natural flow. And so when we talk about obstacle-free, which is one of our objectives, obstacle-free, we're not saying that all obstacles disappear, but how I move through them is as if they're not in any way breaking my stride. Has anyone ever, we'll see how this goes. Has anyone ever run the sprint race hurdles? Has anyone ever done hurdles in track? Sorry? Yeah, I did not want to. I was forced to do it in junior high. I don't know, I don't know what they were thinking, but they asked me to do it in junior high, to run obstacles, hurdles. I don't, if you haven't run them, it's a very fascinating, now if you've watched them being run, you're like, oh, that looks, they're just so streamlined. They just are flowing over those hurdles. They just look so amazing. It's an amazing race to watch. But if you're ever standing in the starting line looking down at those 8 hurdles, you're terrified. Especially when you're little, because it's standard height. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to sprint full throttle down this track and jump over those things and not like run into them, because that's going to be very painful. So I don't know, they would train us over and over, these mechanics and the accuracy needed and the power needed to just flow down the track. So you're not adding a lot of time over what it would be like to run down if those hurdles weren't there. And that always reminded me of spirituality and the spiritual endeavor. It's not that the hurdles aren't there, but I have the knowledge and the yoga, the accuracy, the wisdom, and the power to be able to move through them with that flow, that dignity, that easiness. And so that's what they would sort of suggest that they would feel from Brahma Baba, is this sense of, and just incredible. I mean, we have so many stories. I know many of you heard them. There was the idea of the beggary days, that, it's like, are we going to get any food today? For hundreds, he was responsible not just for himself, but for hundreds of souls. And because of knowledge, the understanding of how things really work, karma, and yoga, his complete connection with the Supreme Soul, he would approach these very big obstacles with a lot of easiness and literally feel like he's, the idea that, he's flowing through them. And so that obstacle-free state, that capacity for flow, needing both knowledge and power or yoga. And so how, as I look in my own day-to-day life, and just to imagine, actually let's try an exercise now. Hopefully you can stay within earshot. I assume that you're in your respective living spaces, so there's probably furniture around. I want you to just stand up. These are always fun, aren't they? These little exercises. Hopefully you can still hear. And okay, so there's probably different pieces of furniture. And I want you to just start to walk around in your space. Great. So you're walking around your space. The odds are very high that you're avoiding the furniture rather than walking through it. Now, I want you to be in the awareness, again, that sitting behind the forehead. In that awareness, I am a soul that's moving this body. This is inner fitness. And choose one quality that's very meaningful to you, a spiritual quality. It might be peace or love, whatever the case. And rather than focusing on outwards, on the furniture I'm trying to walk around, just focus on that quality. And can I move the body through the power of that quality? In essence, I'm having yoga with that quality. Just connected to that quality. Can I move through the space based on the power of that quality, connected to that quality? And then feel free to come and have a seat again. This is an exercise I like to do a lot. So, although it wasn't Supreme Soul, we have the understanding that the source, how we can activate those qualities, is through a connection with Supreme Soul. But that knowledge that I, the soul, am moving this body, and that power, that connection to the quality or the source of those qualities. I like to use this exercise a lot when I'm in spaces, moving through spaces, because we're used to a worldly way where the only way I'll be able to safely flow through a space is if I'm really focusing, looking out there. And when we talk about driving while in meditation, people get a little bit nervous and say, is that safe? And what I've noticed is that I'm actually far more aware when I am in that state of knowledge and yoga, rather than only exclusively based on what's going on out there. I'm far more aware and can even anticipate what's going to happen. So, and I'm not saying I logically anticipate, it's just the thought will come, go this way. I'm like, okay, and I'll go that way. And it's a very different experience. So imagining that this was really what Brahma Baba was drawing on as he moved through this furniture, as he will, these different situations and scenes. We tend to use a worldly way, which is to try and focus out there on what are worldly solutions to all these things that are breaking my flow and why won't they go away? And instead, he kind of kept this connection with truth, who he was, and as we say, who he belonged to, that connection to the Supreme Soul, and used that to maintain a flow as he navigated through these different scenes and situations. So flow requires a lot of trusting what might seem very invisible, incognito, and even ineffectual. I know that's the case in physical fitness, that those who have this incredible control as they're moving through exercises are very content to spend their time working on exercises that are nurturing incognito capacities. We call it the core. They're not very glamorous exercises. They're not showy. They're very subtle, quiet exercises that are really building core capacity. And it's amazing how it changes, how they're moving through spaces, how they're able to execute movements. Some like to focus on the big, showy exercises. And not only are they not having that flow as they transition, but sometimes they're even more prone to injury, to succumbing to the obstacles. So having to look again at my own life, in what level of spirituality am I studying? Am I practicing? And we often talk about this, that I can be spiritually making a show of being spiritual, but not really cultivating that very deep, quiet level of spirituality. It's very incognito. There's no show, but it is what will enable me to flow through exercises in life, to be able to flow through situations. How much am I studying or practicing at that level? That's something we really saw with Brahma Baba. And we say that even though we physically weren't there. He gifted us with, he left his journals, and they repeatedly indicate the amount of deep inner work he was doing. It wasn't about, having a certain position or speaking a certain way. It's quite funny, we have recordings of him speaking, and I had heard this before, but it was really machine gun fire as he's going through, as he's reading a class. It's like, there's nothing, we're like, oh, la, 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 la. He wasn't really like that. So it's really what kind of deep inner work, not showy at all, is required to have that kind of control or that flow. flow ultimately, it's not about removing obstacles, it's about having control over the self. And I found it very interesting when Nilu put the word uncontrolled, because it is both controlled and uncontrolled, or not being controlled. I don't want to be controlled over outer situations. I don't want to say, I don't feel like I'm in a zone or a flow unless everything out there goes my way, which was our thinking before we embarked on spiritual study. But rather, I have so much control or mastery over the self that I can sustain this quality of how I move through things, regardless of what I am what I'm facing. So have I developed that control or mastery inside? And what's required? So I want you to visualize inside, internally now, as you're sitting there, visualize a situation, a recent situation. It can be global, it can be at any level, but a situation that might have been challenging, a bit of a hurdle, if you will, that you have come up against recently. And what were your initial thoughts as you were looking face to face at that hurdle, that so-called obstacle? What were your initial thoughts? Just to reflect on that. Was it focused on the hurdle? Were you thinking a lot about this wrong thing that's happening out there? So this is the idea of if that was the case, of I am being controlled by what's going on out there. So flow won't be possible. Or what kind of inner things could I think about under this category of knowledge and yoga? Not in a sort of mechanical way, forgive the pun, but in a very authentic way. What could I start to do internally that's not focused so much on what I'm facing, but what can I start to do internally that would sustain that sense of moving with dignity through the situation? Any thoughts? I actually had this exact experience this morning, but any thoughts for you? And as you're rehearsing it in your mind, rather than
So
focusing on... Sorry, go ahead, Hema.
it's not so much thinking about the situation out there and focusing more like my true like the seed stage, and try to make myself as much silent as possible rather than entangling into this outsider situation, because anyways it's not in my control, so I can't do anything about that. And by thinking about that, I'm just wasting my energy and all other resources, right? So try to make my mind quieter. So
Very good. Thank you, Hema. Go ahead, Raj.
I think I heard in Sister Gopi's discourse, and she said Dadi Janki's principle was, even though she was like sick and in the hospital, people were taking care of her around the clock. And then once she would recover, people would ask, what's your secret? Like, how did you get through that tough time? And she said, my theory is, or God's theory is, whatever comes, it will go. Any situation, any challenge in life, it comes, it's going to pass. All you have to do is just wait for it to pass. Just stay strong, stay connected to God, and just let it pass. It's going to pass anyways. You just don't worry about the problem or challenge. You just wait for it to pass. So I thought it's a very, very helpful tip when we
that knowledge
get through.
in yoga.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So our past go-to was to focus on the obstacle, like, as we say, hammering against the obstacle. But is there another way, something what we can do internally, rather than focusing externally on the obstacle? What can I do internally in the face of that obstacle to maintain that flow, that dignity?
Well, I think lately I've been really thinking about when things go on through your head. Sort of go, whoa, like who am I even? Like who am I? Who's thinking?
Right.
Like really, really actually go there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we are trying to change how we feel about the situation, trying to transform it. And even though we're learning Raja Yoga, I think we don't really sometimes really practice just that very basic. But it wasn't more like, okay, it's me the soul, but like what is my awareness?
Right.
What am I really feeling?
Great. So we really want to get to the seed or the core.
Also this morning I was just thinking, like in my mind, like what am I really thinking, and what do I think, like what do I need to change things outside there so that I'll feel okay, right? So that was the thing which was going on in my mind since morning, like what are the things I really want to change so that I can feel okay, right? And if I have a list of things that, okay, if this thing would change, I will feel better. If this thing would change, I feel better. So that is the extent of my dissatisfaction and discontentment rather. So then bigger the list, lot of work I need to do, right? So so that was, I was thinking, like, okay, what are the things which I think it's a reason for my discontentment. Yeah. So and yesterday in Rasyukt class, like there was more like authenticity and all, right? So then am I trying to show that I am quite okay, but I am not? So then where are the gaps and how big the gap is, right? So that's what I was just thinking, like, I mean, how many times and how big and huge mask I'm wearing, just showing that, okay, I'm spiritually okay, and no, I have complete control, but inside I know that no, it's not true. So where is that, how big the gap is, right? So
I just wanted to add on what Hema was sharing, because I was just, when you had asked the question, I was thinking about the things that we always dwell on, even if we don't want to, seem to be about how we feel lesser than because of something. And you're running it through your mind. I'm not sure why we think we're going to change it all, but I think it's because of that habit of trying to resolve that. But again, back to, if I'm not really feeling, a real sense of value of myself, then you're not going to able to really stop. I mean, you can probably find temporary solutions to try to reframe it differently. But there's just going to be another situation that will bring it in again.
Yeah, beautiful sharing, everyone. One of the words that was used with flow was natural. And in spirituality, we use the term natural nature. So what's being suggested is that our natural nature actually is to flow, is to be graceful. So we know that very young infants, that pure state, they kind of go, we say, roll with the punches. they don't really experience things so much as obstacles. They just kind of bounce back. And that our natural nature is to flow. But then we start to lose that core of purity. And so the situation that I found very interesting, the internal processing of a situation I was in this morning. Of course, now here we are online, and it's very entertaining with online that before we used to just focus on delivering whatever we were going to deliver, a class, whatever. Now this was a fitness class this morning, so we used to just focus on delivering the fitness class. I have to be honest with you, I think there was so little attention on the actual fitness class this morning because there was a lot of other things once you go online, there's this massive technical aspect. And in this case, we wanted to be able to ensure that the instructor voice, my voice was coming through, that the music was coming through, and it was a complete mess. No matter, everything had been set the night before, but we had to put a different computer in. It was really funny. So I remember the two souls that were there with me, they were trying, there was three, one who was reporting back online, they were trying so hard to deal with this obstacle of getting the mic and the sound. There was no music coming through. This was going on for a good 45 minutes. Participants were starting to come in. We still can't get it. And I remember I had to go, I think, fill a water bottle or something at one point. And I remember in that quiet moment, we are told that for us, core, spiritually, core is awareness. So if core strength creates flow in a physical way, core strength also creates flow in a spiritual way. And spiritually, core is awareness or remembering. So I know this was a bit connected to what Nora was sharing, but I remember when I was alone just filling the water bottle, and that moment just thinking, okay, how can I support the situation? Create a sense of not so much obstacles, but lightness or flow. And going into the awareness of not just who I am, but actually what my function is. What my purpose is in every scene. And it's to provide, just like the hurdler who's going over those hurdles, they need really good form and a lot of power. That's kind of my function. If that's how we actually flow over obstacles, and everyone else is kind of caught up in the obstacle, I can't be caught up in the obstacle. I have to make sure that I am maintaining an awareness of the resources I have available to me. I remember the feeling of, I just want to contribute this vibration, this atmosphere of truth. It had nothing to do with the actual issue. I certainly couldn't contribute anything. I had no technical knowledge whatsoever, but I did have an awareness that I have been working with truth, with awareness. So yeah, let me apply what I've been working with. Let me just create that vibration of truth and that deep trust in those around me. I felt that was more powerful than any technical knowledge whatsoever. And so I remember just having those feelings and then coming back into the space, and things seemed to be working to the best of their ability. We had to start the class, and it was a complete gong show. But how to maintain that flow so that everyone had a really enjoyable experience. And I remember there was one moment when I was laughing so hard because they couldn't see it. It's a bit like you right now. You're just seeing me, but I could see around me a team of so many people trying to create a good experience for them. One of them was crawling on the ground. I mean, it was hysterical. They were just it was rather beautiful to watch. I wasn't even caught up in the problem anymore. It was, again, this vision of truth, to see souls, to see everyone cooperating, working together, to have what we call pure feelings is what creates flow, to access that core of purity. That's our responsibility, is what in our own lives and the lives of others. It's not about the obstacles. And actually what starts to happen is that the obstacle becomes beneficial. There is a point to it. So there was one moment in the class where I was laughing so hard, and I had to say, if you only could see what I was seeing, there are so many souls here trying to create a good experience for you. And I added, you know what? They can't. The only one that can create a good experience for you is you.
Myself.
And suddenly this crazy situation, because right now everyone is only experiencing obstacles. We're calling them restrictions. And they just want the restrictions to go away so their life can go back to its natural flow. But that's not what's going to create natural flow in my life, is the restrictions going away. There will always be something. I can use this time to strengthen the true source of flow in my life, which is my own thoughts and feelings and attitudes. Are they pure? And I remember it was so funny because, all the time there's just things going wrong, and just laughing and reminding everyone that we can create a great experience amidst these seeming hurdles and obstacles through maintaining very pure feelings. Hema, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So Judy, when there was in a fluid mechanics, there is one term they use as a viscosity.
Oh yes, viscosity, yes.
Right? So
thickness,
viscosity,
density.
yeah. So higher the viscosity, more stickier and thicker the fluid is.
Mhm.
And the viscosity represents actually internal friction.
Wow.
Right?
That's
So
powerful.
yeah. So
No
it's
friction. We want no friction.
no friction. Yeah. So if I cannot flow, it's not because of more so of an obstacle, but it's more like
My
internal
viscosity.
friction. So there are a lot of arguments going on between mind and intellect, right? So
Right.
many things going on. So that creates a friction. And
Right.
that actually affects my flow of moving, right?
Yeah. No, it's
Yes.
back to that discontentment you were talking about.
Yeah.
Or desires, which we say is the opposite of purity. I have so much discontentment, so many things that I want to happen. It's creating very much heaviness and viscosity.
Viscosity, right? So I was thinking, what
That's
was that
great.
term?
I
What was
like
the
it.
term we used in fluid mechanics? And then, okay. I
No,
figured
you're absolutely right. That core of purity, that purity isn't there. Purity creates very low viscosity or a lot of fluidness in the self. Those who are content can flow through things so easily. But those who don't have that core of purity, that have a lot of desires, I want things this way, that way. I was laughing the other day because I was like, oh my gosh, we must be really just so discontent. Because in this current situation, we still have food and water and electricity and shelter. We'd be in serious trouble if we didn't have this stuff going on. We have everything still.
healthcare,
Healthcare.
free healthcare.
Sorry?
Free healthcare.
Free
Free
healthcare.
health. If you
And
go
many,
in the other parts of the world, they ended up spending their fortune.
Yeah. No, we have healthcare support. We have financial support for many. I mean, really, it's really kind of good. So what is upsetting us? What are this discontentment inside that I actually can't, really use this situation to increase my purity? That's been my focus. So I remember this morning when it was just crazy around me, people crawling around trying to make things work, and I looking at the participants, and I'm always wondering, it's different when we're sitting here. It's very different. But when you're trying to do fitness on Zoom, there's no time in my mind to focus on the actual class you're delivering. You're so focused on technical things, and at one point they're saying, you're yelling at us, Judy. The mic level was very high, and what are they doing? You're trying to read what they're doing because many don't have their videos on. There's a lot that's going on in a physical fitness class online. And there came a point when I just was like, if you really want to enjoy this, we can't have a lot of demands from the technical. We can't. You have to create a really enjoyable, and for me it's introducing a lot, connected again to the viscosity, a lot of lightness into the situation. So much lightness. Just souls that are content are so light. And where there's that lightness, there's not the heaviness. Where there's that lightness, that purity, so easy to flow through things. So easy. So I just kept joking around because it was kind of laughable. But also I was very aware of how much love and care. These souls are not making any money off of these online fitness classes. They're making zero money. They are simply doing it out of love and concern. And they have spent so much out of pocket in terms of the technical equipment to make that class happen. I was very aware of all of that. So how to maintain those kinds of pure appreciative, pure feelings?
Discontentment is also not because of the present situation. Even before this present situation, we were not
Content.
content anyways, right? Now I have a reason to point out that this is because of that, but I wasn't content, and I didn't have contentment before as well.
Yeah, no, it's
But I mean, that time I could not point out at anything, and it could be my internal, or it's a family matter or something, but I cannot just say it out loud. But now I can, right? Because everybody's in the same boat. So like it gives me all reason
I have a
to be
target.
discontent.
I have a target for my discontentment, a very clear target. And it's true in physical fitness as well. I can have a weak core and do some non-challenging exercises and get away with it. But when the challenging exercises come, it will very much make it clear that I don't have that strong core. Similarly, in these so-called challenging, again, I'm suggesting this isn't that challenging. It could be a zillion times worse what's going on. But in this more challenging situation, it will highlight whether I have a strong core of purity or not. You know, so that I've noticed that there are some souls who they haven't broken their stride. They keep flowing. I feel very fortunate. I'm around many of them. They just keep flowing. They just, things come along and they just, I left the studio. I think the class ended this morning. The fitness class ended at 10 o'clock. I left at 11:30. They were still working on that technique out of love. They were just like, we're going to get this. And I'm like, you people have to go home. No, we're going to out of love, really, because they're getting nothing out of it, but they just, these pure feelings are like fuel right now. And they enable us to move in a very powerful, productive, light way through situations. And Hema's right. It's not that the situation created discontentment. Discontentment was already there. And the situation really brought it to the foreground. I think you were going to say something. Sorry, Nora.
I was just thinking about how when there's discontentment, there's always a need to want more and more. And then there's a lot of complexity. And it's funny because I was thinking about the IT, even with the center, how it's more stuff and more stuff. And then when I've had to do the IT for programs, you don't really actually get to enjoy the program, actually. You're sort of the one who's looking after all the other stuff. So I guess I was really thinking about simplicity, if, the relationship between simplicity and flow.
Yeah, I think I know that we want to deliver a good product, and that's very important. We want to deliver a good experience, I get that, but it is getting very complicated, and it's still, even as I left there this morning, and there were so many devices, peripheral devices, and cables, and plugged in, and it became actually comical, because while trying to fix it, they had tried this jack, that jack, and they didn't even know where they were anymore, what the original sort of configuration was, and what the settings were on Zoom. We didn't know anymore. It was so bad. But it was like, the whole point was to just take time to move. That was the whole point of the exercise. So how to, at least internally, not lose the point. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the technical or that attention to providing a quality experience, but whilst doing it, because it may or may not work, whilst doing it, don't lose the point. And the point of it all is well-being, to support each other, give that positive energy to each other, like don't lose the point. And whether it's the provider or those attending, and those attending are taking their cue from the providers. So it's very, again, what is my function here? What is my function? And there was one point I could tell the soul who was overseeing it was getting very frustrated, and they were not themselves at all. I'll come to you in a moment, Hema. They were not themselves. And I remember, it's a bit like Dadi Prakashmani used to do this. I didn't remember her but I'm remembering it now. She used to do this when there were meetings. And in the meetings, a little bit of maybe discontent or just complication coming up. And these were, the main teachers of Brahma Kumaris in India or abroad coming together to meet, the management committee. And she could feel there was some friction, shall we say. The fluidness was going. There was some friction. And she had a wonderful way of bringing them back to the point. Some of you know this. She'd say, I think it's time for ice cream. I think it's time for ice cream. Let's have some ice cream. And someone may say, whoa, this is a leader of an international organization, and their way of solving problems is to get some ice cream. And of course it worked. It brought everyone, broke the tension, brought them back to the point. I remember this morning, could feel this soul isn't even themselves anymore. Like in terms of their nature, they're so frustrated. They're really losing themselves. I said, totally asked them a completely unrelated question, like, that was a great song list you have. Where'd you get that song list from? And for the first time I saw them smile and come out of it, and how to get out of that heaviness, whether it's for the self or for others. That's our function. Because we, in the spiritual study, we focus. We just do all core training. We're always focusing on purity. Our true nature. We're always focusing on purity. So not only am I creating that strength, but also I'm there to provide that presence for others. Last comment, going to Hema. I know you had your hand up.
No, Judy, man, just like I'm talking for myself.
Yeah.
When we are doing something, I already have an outcome in my mind. So my every activity is so much outcome oriented. So if the outcome is not the way I wanted, then no matter. People could like whatever I have done, but no, because it was not exactly the way I wanted it to be. So then I have a reason not to be content. So, this is so, we become so much outcome oriented that most of the time we don't have any reason to be happy or be content, right? So
no, it's very true. And going back to the physical fitness example, we started by saying those who have very fluid control in their movements, they're very content to focus on the incognito. They do a lot of core training, very incognito training. So if you enjoy that experience of cultivating the non-showy, so not the outcomes, it's not of interest to you, it's just, then you'll be liberated from being outcome, much more what we call income focused. That in every situation, always exploring, did I grow spiritually? That's the success, not any outcomes out there, but did my core of purity improve in this situation? That's all we're interested in. We call it income. So we say the only pure desire we have is to become pure. And so we're always looking at that. It's not a, oh, I failed, or it's just always learning. That's the beauty of focusing on income or one's own purities. It's always learning. It's never judgment or sentencing or punishment or, oh, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or it didn't happen the way I want. It's always like, wow, did I cultivate more purity? Did I still remain true to myself? Was there that authenticity? What did I learn? Is there still self-respect? This is cultivation of my purity, of my spiritual core. That becomes, we're liberated from all of that show of outcome. And the beauty is that if I'm doing that anyways, there is the assurance that whether it's immediately or maybe down the road, there will be a benevolent result. And it's not just for myself, and it's not about my desires. There will be benefit for everyone. So that allows us to see the situation is happening for beneficial reasons. It's helping me to develop the capacity to be an instrument for benevolent outcomes, if you will. So it's such a constant return to purity, pure thinking, pure attitudes. I don't know where the time went. Suddenly it's 3 o'clock. Wow. All right. Oh, so sorry. That's okay. I have pure feelings for your phone. So we'll take a moment for a final reflection. I think next week, healing. I know why too. I think we will be here. Yes, we will be here. We'll have time. So healing next week. That's so exciting. But for now, focusing on inner flow. I go back to sitting in my inner kingdom, where quality of life really happens. Checking the degree of flow, of grace, of lightness, the degree of purity in my inner kingdom. And realizing how critical purity is for creating a life of ease and flow. Just as we think physical wealth buys comfort in the outer world, it's the currency of purity that creates comfort and ease in my inner world. It is like the oxygen in the atmosphere of my inner world. And I want that oxygen to be flowing. So next time I come face to face with something I perceive to be an obstacle or hurdle, it is a great opportunity to check the levels of purity in my inner kingdom. Do I respond with pure awareness, pure attitudes, pure thoughts? Not focusing so much on the situation, wanting it to be a certain way or to change, but whether I am breathing purity into the situation. Is there oxygen of purity in my inner kingdom? A great way to check the flow of that oxygen of purity in my inner kingdom. Om Shanti. Yet again, thank you so much for joining today, and your contributions were amazing as always. And we look forward to next time, next weekend or before, if you join the sessions during the week. Om Shanti.